Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session on Paths and Trails and Woodlands on behalf of Community Woodlands Association. I am delighted to have you here today. Throughout the session, we'll learn about the support and resources that are available to our members through Paths for All, and we'll also learn about each of the 3 community woodland groups who've experiences in developing their own paths and trails over recent years. You'll learn from their expertise and be guided from the lessons they have learned. We're lucky to be joined by Richard Armstrong from Paths for All, Norman Lannigan. Norman, nice to have you here, who has come from Breich Community Woodland in Lothian. We have Stuart Whittaker. He is based at Cassiltoun Housing Association and is going to chat about Castle Milk Wood in Glasgow. And we've got Andy Robertson. He's going to be sharing some information about Anagach woods in Grandson, Spain. And I am delighted to have you with me here today. Before we begin, please allow me to indulge me a little bit whilst I talk to you about Community Woodlands Association. Now, I know we have some people on our call today who are not actually members, so I just want to rattle through very quickly, because we've got a very tight schedule, about what we do at Community Woodland Groups, Community Woodland Association on behalf of our member groups. We advocate on behalf of them. We promote and represent community woodland groups across the political arena and to the wider world. We support and advise through sessions like this, through exchange visits that we do in person, and we recently, only a fortnight ago, had our annual conference in AGN, which was a joy for those of us who were there. We connect people through those sessions. We have professional support from our professional forester, and we're also running mentoring sessions just now from professional foresters to help some of our community woodland groups. And we work in partnerships with strategic partners nationally so that we can work on behalf of our members at that national table. If you are not a member of Community Woodland Association and you'd be interested in finding out a little bit more, then please do take the opportunity to scan this QR code. And I will endeavour just now, see if I can, I'll need to come back to actually, I will share in the chat at some point a link to where you can get access on our website. So QR code or via the link I will put into the chat. As I said earlier on, we are using new technology today, so every day is a school day. And we weren't very sure what was going to be happening with regards to starting the session and whatnot, but I think we've gone relatively smoothly given the circumstances. We do have a very jam-packed day today. I'm Shannon Smith. I didn't introduce myself. I'm the Member Support Officer for Community Woodlands Association, and I'm delighted to have you all here today, so thank you for joining me. As I mentioned, we've got Richard, who's going to be chatting to us about Paths for All, Norman, who's going to chat about the community woodland and their involvement of volunteers at Breich, Stuart, who'll be talking about signage and lighting and the journey of their path development at Castle Milk, and Andy is not only just going to be talking about bicycle trails, but just the wider tracks and paths that they have at Anagach Wood as well. I haven't factored in a 5-minute screen break or stretch your legs break or stand up and have a shiggle break, but depending on the pace of our speakers, then hopefully we'll be able to get something factored in after Norman, just for 5 minutes to just move the body, okay? So no pressure, speakers, none whatsoever. And I'd just like to welcome you all and thank you. Richard, I'm going to pass over to you. So if you would like to take responsibility by taking control at the top, perfect, magic. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I recognise a few familiar faces and see a few familiar names. I've always been a big fan of the work that Community Woodlands Association does. So yeah, absolutely delighted to be here and tell you a little bit about the work that Paths for All does and how we can provide support and resources that might help Community Woodland Associations with kind of path improvement works and things like that. So for many of you, for anyone that's on the call who's never heard of Paths for All before, Paths for All, we are Scotland's walking charity. We promote walking. We promote walking walking as being really important for our health and well-being, whether it's kind of recreational walking or whether it's kind of travelling for kind of active travel purposes. We all know that physical activity is really quite important for our health and our well-being, and at Pass for All we kind of promote walking as being the kind of easiest and most accessible form of physical activity. Almost everyone can do it, and you don't need any specialist equipment to do it, and in an ideal world we should all be able to do it from our doorsteps as well. It's got many benefits for our health and our well-being, and it's also, you know, more people choosing to walk or cycle and using public transport rather than always relying on cars for getting from A to B. It's got multiple benefits to the environment as well. In terms of benefits, you know, walking, I'm not going to go through them all today, but in terms of benefits, Scotland was one of the first countries to have a national walking strategy. And within the national walking strategy, it highlighted that there was 14 different policy areas that walking could potentially have a role to play in. So it's a really diverse activity. This is our kind of our vision and our mission that Pass for All has. So essentially, Pass for All, our vision is for Scotland to become a walking nation, where everyone has the opportunity to be active every day, creating a happier, healthier and greener Scotland. And our mission is to kind of support people in Scotland to be active every day. We've got four kind of main objectives. I'm not going to go through them all on the call just now. I'm just going to highlight that one of the four objectives is creating walking environments, and that's the one that I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about today. So many of you have probably received kind of funding and support from Pass for All's Community Pass team in the past. But unfortunately, you know, due to kind of changes in the funding environment, Pass for All kind of finds itself in a bit of a transition year. I say that statement quite a lot, but I'm not quite sure exactly what it means. I know there's a number of things that we can no longer do, and we're trying to kind of look at ways of kind of adapting it to new areas of work and things like that moving forward. So the things that we can no longer do, which some of you have probably got some experience in, is our Community Pass programme no longer runs. So what that means is that we're no longer able to deliver our Community Path grants. We're unfortunately no longer able to deliver on-site training courses. So we used to deliver quite a lot of training courses, both in person and online, on subjects around kind of path maintenance, managing path projects, around Scotland's path grading system. We had webinars on climate change and the impact it could have on path networks, webinars on monitoring footfall and things like that, but unfortunately we're no longer able to deliver them either. And we're not able to provide as much advice and support as we used to. So we used to have kind of 4 members of staff who could help provide advice and support to groups and organisations who were developing path projects. We now only have 1 at the moment. So we're a bit kind of limited in what we can do in terms of advice and support. So, however, you know, we're still kind of keeping our chins up and try to get on with things as best we can. And as I say, we're kind of looking at new areas of work as well, and we're going to come on to that kind of later on. But, you know, we're still kind of quite passionate about creating walking environments. You know, it's a core part of our strategic strategy. And we've got within our strategy, we've got these kind of 3 bold kind of we will statements. So the first one is we will manage and fund the development, maintenance and promotion of places and spaces, paths and routes for everyone to be active. And we're still able to do that through our Ian Finlay Path Fund. And I'm going to talk about that later on as well. We champion best practice design standards to improve our walking environments, both urban and rural. To provide local, accessible and enjoyable opportunities to walk and wheel for everyone. And we do that through our National Path demonstration site, the development of resources that are on our website. We're going to talk about them later on. And we continue to promote places and spaces to increase the use of paths, parks and urban green spaces and forests as ideal places to be active, improve health and well-being and support climate mitigation. So we do a lot of that work through our comms team, but also through our Scotland's path grading system as well, which I'm going to talk about during this presentation. So the first thing I want to just kind of mention is our Ian Finlay Path Fund. So, this kind of ties into the first we will statement. So we're still able to fund path projects. So we have a dedicated Ian Finlay Path Fund. The Ian Finlay Path Fund is supported by Transport Scotland, and it's an active travel fund. So community groups and organisations can apply to us for funding of between £10,000 and £100,000 to be spent on active travel path projects. Through the Ian Finlay Path Fund, we can fund design costs, and we can fund construction costs as well. So many of the applicants kind of get in touch with us. Their first application is for design costs, and then their second application will be construction costs, and then they go on and build their path project. The focus of the Ian Finlay Path Fund, as I say, it is on active travel, but it's about kind of trying to develop inclusive and resilient path networks that are fit for purpose. And I'm just going to quickly go on to the next slide. So on this slide, it kind of gives you a little bit of a kind of map and overview of all the projects that have been funded through the Ian Finlay Path Fund. So it's probably going to be a little bit small for you to see it on the slide, but you will receive kind of PDF copies of the slides, and you'll be able to click on the hyperlinks and go to the website that has more information. So through the Ian Finlay Path Fund, we support a lot of projects, both urban and rural. So if any of you are kind of thinking about a potential funder for a path project, it's definitely worth looking at the Ian Finlay Path Fund. But my advice would be look at the information on the website, download the guidance notes first, have a look through the guidance notes, and if you think your project idea would be suitable, then get in touch with the team at the Ian Finlay Path Fund, and they will give you further advice. One thing that's really quite useful about the Ian Finlay Path Fund team is that they kind of make an attempt to go out and see absolutely everyone that applies or is interested in applying. So they'll go out and they'll meet with groups, they'll talk over potential project ideas, and then they'll offer kind of advice and support around kind of technical aspects of path design and things like that. So that's to just ensure that the completed path will be accessible and it will be resilient as well. So they're looking for path projects that are funded to be in use for at least 15 years. And they give quite a lot of support at the very, very start to make sure that everything's catered for within the application and that the project goes ahead and it's kind of really fit for purpose. So we're still able to deliver that project. So probably Stuart will kind of touch on parts of the Ian Finlay Path Fund as well in his presentation. So kind of moving on to the second bold we will statement. So we will champion and promote best practice inclusive design standards that improve our walking environments and provide opportunities for people to walk more. And we still do this through our National Path demonstration site, the provision of technical advice, and through the kind of having our community path good guidance resources available for free for download, and also we kind of do what we can to make sure those are kind of constantly updated as well. So all those things are still available to us even when we're in this kind of this area of change. So for any of you who's never been to the National Path demonstration site, our National Path demonstration site is at Oakridge College in West Lothian. So I'm not quite sure when the demonstration site was first established, but it was round about the time when the Land Reform Act came into force. So when the Land Reform Act came into force, local authorities were required to develop core path plans, which is essentially a kind of network of kind of protected paths that were kind of intended to be like the kind of core paths that people would use. And as that was going on, there was a kind of feeling at that time that local authorities would probably be doing quite a lot of work on path networks. And the National Path demonstration site was established at that time so that anyone involved in developing a path project could come along to the demonstration site. They could look at a range of different materials that were used, so different path surfaces. They could look at different infrastructure. So it helped people to kind of specify the right materials that they would need to use in their own path project to ensure that it was fit for purpose and accessible. The National Path Demonstration Site had also been used quite a lot for training courses as well, so we used it as a training venue. We would get people along and we would deliver a range of training courses on the demonstration site. Unfortunately, we're not going to be doing as much of that now, but the demonstration site is still there. It's still well looked after by our technical officer. We still deliver kind of guided tours of the National Path demonstration site. So quite often, whether it's a community group or an organisation, will get in touch with us and ask to be taken around the demonstration site. So for example, we've had staff from Transport Scotland, we've had staff from Sustrans, we've had staff from Natural England. So there's been an awful lot of interest in the demonstration site. And yeah, so anyone that's maybe on the call that's part of a group and thinking about a path project, you could certainly get in touch with us and we could potentially organise a kind of to take you around the National Path demonstration site and talk about various design elements and different materials and resources and things like that. Kind of new additions to the National Path demonstration site is that we have a strength and balance area. So our Walking for Health team promotes kind of strength and balance. And we do quite a lot. That team does some work within a kind of care home environment as well. And as part of that, that team has kind of helped to install strength and balance infrastructure within care homes. So that, the idea being that people who aren't very physically active can use the strength and balance posts, work on their balance and things like that, and then be able to kind of start kind of walking again and getting a little bit more kind of physical activity. So we get lots of people come out to see that part of it. And we also have a kind of dementia-friendly area as well. So we talk a little bit about kind of dementia-friendly design. And this is kind of an example of good practice in dementia-friendly design. So again, there's been staff involved in doing kind of gardening projects in care homes and hospitals, and the good practice that's available to see at the National Path demonstration site is really quite useful for all of that. So yeah, National Path demonstration site, it's a great place. We also you might not be able to see it very clearly in the picture, but we kind of also promote the use of kind of green infrastructure. So kind of wildflower planting, hedge planting, tree planting as part of kind of path projects as well. So we kind of promote that through the National Path demonstration site as well. And yeah, as I said, we showcased a whole range of different materials. At the time, there was a few materials which are probably there were probably materials that nobody had ever really heard of. So one is called kind of FlexiPave, and the other one is, I can't remember what it was called actually. It's a recycled material. So it kind of reuses existing path material and then adds a kind of hydraulic binder to it, and you're able to reuse it. So it's a way of kind of building paths, reusing existing materials. So at the time, those materials hadn't been used, but because they were there at the demonstration site and organisations were coming along and seeing it, we're actually starting to see those materials being used a lot more in kind of active travel projects. So Sustrans in particular are kind of using them a lot more. So it's been really quite useful at kind of getting people to adapt to using different path materials and things like that, which has benefited a lot of users. Moving on, we have a whole host of community path good guidance documents. And yeah, I was at a conference last year over in Ireland. Somebody saw me with my kind of pastoral jacket and came up and gave me a nudge and said, "Oh, brilliant, we use your resources all the time. We've been using them for years. They're absolutely brilliant." So our resources, our path resources that are on our website that are available for download, they are, year on year, they're the most popular documents that are downloaded from our website. They're downloaded by people all over the UK and beyond. I don't have time to go into depth and give you an overview of each of the documents, but I'm just going to kind of run through them just very, very briefly. So the Lowland Path Construction Guide, it's been the kind of go-to document for many organisations and many people involved in developing path projects. It gives you a bit of guidance on kind of consultations, surveying existing paths to get an idea of the condition and then identify the work that's required. It then gives you some advice on how to design paths, how to go out to tender, and how to kind of manage contracts and things like that as well. Gives you lots of kind of guidance around drainage infrastructure, path specifications. It's got it's got so much in there. It's probably the kind of most popular downloaded document from our website. So yeah, and when I was a countryside ranger looking after a range of sites, it was a document I used time and time again. It was brilliant. Our how-to guides are a set of kind of 9 guides. They were kind of initially designed for kind of groups who go out and do kind of practical work. So if you're kind of part of a group who goes out with a group of volunteers doing some practical work on the ground yourselves, our how-to guides might be really useful. So there's guidance in there on how to install signage, how to maintain path surfaces, how to maintain hand tools, how to approach vandalism on paths, control vegetation, manage paths for wildlife, and look after path features. Use hand tools safely and keep waters off paths. So there's quite a lot of stuff in there. What's really key to them is that they're really quite concise. So it's kind of how-to guides. There's 9 different guides, and all they are is a kind of double-sided page of A4. So some groups kind of download them, laminate them, and actually take them out with them when they're doing tasks. So that they're really popular and really good and might be quite useful to the groups that you're working with. Our community paths guides, that's for kind of groups who are not necessarily groups, it's more for people who are thinking of setting up a path group, and it gives them a little bit of guidance on how to do that. We've got our Path Manager's Guide to Grading, so that's all about using Scottish path grading system, and I'm going to give you a little bit of more information on that in a couple of slides. That document's also being updated at the moment. It's just a little bit of a kind of refresh. We're not necessarily making any changes to the path grading system itself. It's all about looking at the document and making it a little bit more user-friendly. So we're working on that with Nature Scot and Forestry Land Scotland at the moment. We have our Outdoor Accessibility Guide. So this was quite a significant piece of work for us. So many of you might have heard of the Countryside for All Guide, it was called the BT Countryside for All Guide. It was developed by Fieldfare Trust, and it was funded by BT, the telecoms company. So it'd been around for a very long time. It'd been used by lots of organisations. It kind of focused on making outdoor spaces more accessible for disabled people. The Fieldfare Trust kind of folded around maybe about 5 years ago, and when they folded, they asked Pass for All if we would take on the licence for the Countryside for All Guide and keep that area of work going. So that was something that we took on. By the time that we took it on, there'd been quite a lot of changes. So it was initially a UK-wide document that kind of aligned itself quite neatly with the Disability Discrimination Act. So when it came to us, the document was quite old. We now had kind of devolved parliaments with different legislation affecting outdoor access in each of the 4 UK nations. And we also had the Disabilities Discrimination Act had also been replaced by the Equality Act of 2010. So to bring the document up to date, it required quite a lot of significant work, but it's something that we worked on with help from a consultant, and that piece of work is now finished, and the document is now available to download from our website and have a look through. One thing that's quite important about the document is that they all kind of work together as well. So you'll maybe start looking at one document and then there'll be a hyperlink to another one. So the Lowland Path Construction Guide, for example, doesn't give you a lot of information on signage. It kind of directs you to our signage guidance.
Richard, so reminds you of the time, sorry.
Yeah, cool, no problem at all. So we've got our signage guidance as well, which is as it is, it's guidance around installing signage and designing signage. We've got our surfacing guide for path projects, which is, as it says on the title, it's all about surfacing guides. It's all about kind of different path surfaces. We've got our estimating price guide for path projects. So this is quite important if you're thinking about putting together a project and approaching funders. If you need to get an idea of what your project cost might be, you can refer to our estimating price guide and it will help you with that. And similarly, we've got our path bridges guide. So if you're looking at installing bridges, that gives you all the kind of information that you need to help you with that process as well. And if you can't find what you're looking for in our resources, you can also have a look at the Saturn website as well. So this has become a bit of a repository for a whole host of kind of technical information around outdoor access projects and active travel projects. There's a whole host of stuff on there. Kind of mention very briefly the path grading system. So for any of you who's not familiar with the path grading system was developed to be a consistent way of promoting and grading paths. So before the path grading system, we didn't really have a consistent system of grading paths. People would go out and they would walk it, and then we get to the end and they would go, oh, that felt quite easy, or that felt quite hard, and then they would grade it as being easy or hard. The path grading system is developed to be quite consistent, and it kind of really consists of kind of 6 parts. It's got the title, which is supposed to kind of grab your attention. We've got the path promotion bit, which is the kind of text box at the top. It's all about, it's essentially just a kind of promotional spiel, if you like. It's about kind of selling the walk to people. We've got the terrain description. So that's the bit in the bottom left that kind of, as it is, it kind of describes the terrain. It's got a symbol that's kind of linked to the grade. So we've got 4 different grades. We've got easy, most accessible, easy, moderate, and strenuous. And then we've also got kind of distance and time estimates as well. Yeah, and I think one of the things that's kind of quite important about the path grading system at the moment is that, you know, time and time again, research that Paths for All does, the lack of information is a significant barrier that prevents people from going on a walk. And the path grading system is a way of kind of breaking down that barrier. And also as well, we see quite a lot of disabled users using a whole range of adaptive equipment when they're accessing the outdoors. So previously, you know, wheelchair users with manual wheelchairs would be kind of confined to the easy, most accessible grade routes. But because of the kind of range and the different types of equipment that disabled people are using more, disabled people now look at the path grading system and read the description, and then they're able to make a judgment call on whether or not the equipment they're using at that time is capable of using those routes. So it kind of opens up a whole load of opportunities for disabled users as well. And there's a lovely picture of what it looks like when it's all in place. Yeah, I had to put that in for Stuart there. And quickly, just kind of moving on. As I say, Paths for All, we're in a little bit of a transition year. But an area of work that we're progressing at the moment is called developing walking communities. And that's a kind of my kind of main job at the moment, is to kind of developing that program. But essentially what we're doing is we're kind of taking a placemaking approach to identifying the barriers that are preventing people from walking in communities and working with kind of local stakeholders to break down those barriers. So you'll be hearing a little bit more about that project as it develops over the next few months. So kind of keep a look on your Community Pass newsletters when they come in your inboxes, and look at your Facebook and Twitter posts, because our comms team will be keeping you in the loop that way as well. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Well done, Richard. Thank you so much for a really informative presentation. And even at the simple resource of your estimating guide will be really useful for people starting out, so that they can consider how much things will cost if they're seeking grants and things. Folks, I have created this is a new tool for us, the Q&A option. So we're going to be really tight for time, but if you've got questions for our presenters, please do put them into the Q&A, and we'll see if our presenters can access and maybe answer as we go. And if not, we'll get these answers out to you at some point. So please explore that option if you can. I'm going to go to Norman now. Norman, are you able to turn your camera on?
Sharon, hopefully.
Okay.
My apologies, I'm on plan C at the moment.
No problem at all.
It's working now. I've never used the take control, but I'll try it. I'll see what I can do. Okay.
You press take control at the top, and then that's you in control of moving your slides on. If not, I can do it for you. That's you. All done. Well done.
That's fine. Is everybody able to see those slides okay and hear me okay?
We are indeed. Yes, absolutely. Go for it.
That's good. Okay, right. So thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk about our approach to maintaining paths, in particular our approach to recruiting and using volunteers. So this is us here, We are a relatively new community woodland in that we're fortunate to be able to purchase the wood from the Green Action Trust about 2 years ago. We've been a community-owned woodland for 2.5 years. And I'm a trustee. I'm privileged to be a trustee of that woodland. The woodland is, you wouldn't be surprised to know, it's in 19 hectares of mixed species trees, approximately 30-year-old planted. But we have some veteran trees which we reckon are about 150, somewhere between 150 and 200 years old. Some of those are unfortunately next to the roadside, which makes life a bit more difficult for us to manage. So we were fortunate to buy this from the community, from the Green Action Trust using the Scottish Land Fund, which I was at the conference last 2 weeks ago, and I found quite a lot of people have used that source to purchase the community woodland. So that's us. You'll not be surprised to know I think it's a beautiful place. Its beauty is in its wildness, and our job is really just to look after it, maintain it, and keep it healthy, effectively, is what we do for the benefit of the community. This is, I'm not sure you'll be able to see that clearly, but this is a kind of a concept map of our woodland. I don't know if you can see my arrow. Can you see my arrow? We're bounded to the north by the River Almond, and to the east by the Breich water, both of which are tributaries under the confluence here of the Forth. So these both run into the Forth. So we benefit of having a rather lovely waterway around the woodland. This is our woodland here. The yellow is our main stone-formed path, which is about 2.5 kilometres long, perhaps. Yeah, 2.5 kilometres. And we have some ways through the main part of the woodland here. But the ways are kind of difficult to use because it's very, very boggy in the middle there, which we can talk about later on. So it's the main path, compressed stone path along the boundary of the woodland, and there's a rather lovely, through our woodland and then up this farm track, a lovely circular walk which kept me alive during lockdown, which is how I found the wood, actually, was during lockdown. The yellow right the way around here is listed as a core path, but that means nothing to those of you who are more experienced in it. We stupidly thought that meant that the council had some responsibility for maintaining it. The local council, they don't. But it's called a core path, but it means nothing, effectively. These grass ways, grass paths through the main wood, tend to be kind of boggy and not well used. The horses certainly don't like it. It's too boggy for them. We also form part of the Shale Trail, if anybody's ever heard of that. I'll talk a wee bit about that later on. The Shale Trail runs from about here, the main entrance, to about here, and then carries down to Livingston. The Shale Trail is a heritage trail in West Lothian, and I'll talk a wee bit more about that because the maintenance of that is quite important. We did a survey for a grant that we looked for, and to gauge the amount of visits we think there are per year, an estimate, and we think there are 20,000 visits. Not different people, lots of regulars use it routinely, regularly, but 20,000 visits per year. Mixed use, walkers, dog walkers, runners, cyclists and horse riders, mainly, as the users of the path. So Shale Trail, I said I would talk a wee bit. So West Lothian Heritage Trail celebrates the shale mining industry heritage in West Lothian. For those of you who don't know West Lothian, it's a 16-mile trail which you can walk between West Calder and Winchborough. And if anybody fancies walking it, I strongly recommend it. It's a fantastic walk. The interesting key point here is Lothian Council has a policy to maintain this pathway. So as opposed to the core path, the West Lothian Council has a policy to maintain that part of our pathway. So what that meant was that we had a dangerous looking bridge, a small bridge over a drainage channel, and it was beginning to wobble a bit. So the magic words were health and safety of the walkers on the Shale Trail and Shale Trail, which meant Lothian Council sent a contractor out and repaired it. Fantastic job we made of it as well. So always good to work out what the council will have. We've got a good relationship with the Lothian End Council. I can't fault them, but core paths mean nothing in their eyes. But the shell trail, which is a policy to maintain that, was an advantage to us. So what do we get up in our woodland? Well, quite a lot actually. We run regular nature and conservation activities. We have some keen photographers among our volunteers and our trustees who run photography walks, and this is a photograph here that was taken within the wood of the kingfisher. And also we use the maintenance events as a really social event. It's a good way of getting people together, getting people to meet new people, and you can have great fun being involved in our maintenance events. We also take part in citizen science projects. We contribute to the Guardians of our Rivers, which donates data on the rivers that form part of our woodland to study pollution and track pollution in our rivers. You'll not be surprised to know that we've got high nitrate in our rivers, mainly because most of those tributaries, the Elmond and the Breich, run through a lot of agricultural land. So volunteers are the key to our success. We are not experts at all. We rely on organisations such as the Community Woodlands Association, who help us out massively, and in fact we've benefited from having a mentor forester this year, who's been great at helping us target the areas where we need to concentrate our efforts on. But volunteers are the key to our success. And how do we recruit them? Always difficult, isn't it, to do that? But we have events. We run come visit your woodland events, social media, leafleting nearby households. We get a lot of people interested there. People with trades as well. We want to come along and help. Health and safety of any volunteers is absolute priority for us. And we set up communications when we're going to run various events through a WhatsApp group that people sign up to. And we also partner with other volunteer groups. And I wanted to particularly highlight this partnership. This is very humbling, this partnership, because here was a group of special needs volunteers who wanted to give something back to the community and wanted to come and work in our woodland, and what could we do? And the lady on the left here that you can see, this is not the Grim Reaper, but some of our volunteers were trained in scything methodology, and they scythe the paths. They keep the vegetation away from the paths using scythes. And these wonderful volunteers here come every Friday during the summer. They've come and they've raked up what's been scythed, which is a absolutely vital part of maintaining our paths, and we're really, really grateful to them. They come in all weathers, and they love it. And here's some pictures of our volunteers. This is them at work here, and this is pictures of our volunteers. And this lovely young lady couldn't be there on that date, and she was devastated. So I promised I would put a special picture of her onto the line here. So that's our very special volunteer group. So what's our priorities? Well, in terms of maintenance, keeping the path, the stone path in particular, accessible to all is our main priority. So in order to do that, we have to deal with fallen trees. We have to keep on top of the vegetation because Mother Nature is just constantly wanting to reclaim our path. That's what happens. We need to improve the drainage so that it's a bit easier for people to get through, and dealing with any trip hazards that might appear on the path. So our main maintenance is around that. It's around keeping that path accessible. So here's a fallen tree here, as you can see. And one of our volunteers dealing with vegetation, high vegetation. This is not a fallen tree. So this happens. Trees fall, as you all know. That happens. They don't often fall on the path, but when they do, we like to try and get them away and keep the path open. And in fact, we've got a wee industry going that this was a fallen cherry tree, which we harvested. And with our partners in the Community Woods and Garden in Paul Beth, who have a workshop, we actually made coat hangers from that cherry tree that we cut down, having fallen on the path. So we actually make things to help sell and then keep the woodland going. So we have people trained. We've got people trained in tree survey, and they do an annual tree survey and detect diseased and damaged trees at risk of falling on the path, or in particular the adjacent road where we've got some responsibility. We've purchased a chainsaw, thanks to Pass for All, thanks to Richard there, when they did have money. That was when they did have money. I'll quickly say that now. But we Pass for All, and then Pass for All helped us with the training as well, because obviously if we're going to let anybody loose with a chainsaw, they know what they're doing. So they helped us out with the funding for that. We use tree surgeons for conservation or working at height, and we have a contingency fund in our budget for that. In particular, it's the veteran trees. We've had some ash dieback appear in some of the veteran trees, and we've conserved those trees by using the tree surgeons. Tree surgeons love tree conservation, by the way, my experience. But one of our tree surgeons we use says, I love this because this is the only time I get to be the good guy, because mainly they say they're cutting trees down for housing, and they're not popular when they have to do that. That's where he makes most of his money. And I mentioned that Community Woods and Garden in Polbeth and the workshop partnership, which has just been absolutely fantastic for us. So Richard mentioned improving drainage. This is one of our main issues on the site, and we did a puddle survey recently using. I had been fortunate enough to attend the Pass for All path maintenance training, which Richard mentioned is now no longer, which is a shame. It's no longer available, because I gained a lot from it. And I also learned how to do things like surveying. We identified 19 sites for improvement. So when everybody's jaw dropped and thought, how are we ever going to do that? You start then to pick it off. The best way to deal with it is the same way as you would eat an elephant, a bit at a time, is what we've taken on. And what we've done is we also worked with the West Lothian Ranger Service, who were fantastic, and telling us that we actually didn't need to dig huge drainage channels, that we had plenty of vegetation to soak up the rain. What was happening was the rain was pulling down the path and then pulling in areas, and they showed us how to detect where the rain might be running, where the water might be running, and how to cut like spoon channels at the site to help the water off the path. So we've been busy doing that in a lot of the areas. I want to now finish off, and Sharon will be delighted with that, finish off with a special project, which is really because of I was put in charge of it because I'm a pharmacist by trade, so what I know about PASS is nothing, except when I went on the Pass for All course and learned a good bit about it. And this is a complex drainage improvement project. We have water flowing in from an agricultural field, and it was possibly a damaged field drain, but it was literally bubbling up through the soil. And it was finding its way to the natural drainage across one of our paths. And it was causing erosion of the path and a possible trip hazard through that erosion. So we tried everything. We tried digging trenches like this, and no joy. It wasn't making any difference to it. So somebody came up with a bright idea, why don't we develop the water underneath the path? So that was when we went and looked at the wonderful Lowland Path Construction Guide and how to divert water under your path using a culvert area. So I was given the task to design that and lead that project. And the way I tackled it is the Pass for All technical guide. So obviously here, advice from Richard and his team as well. Advice from the Community Woods and Garden, Amy Davidson there and Sarah, brilliant Pass experts. Take care with advice from any civil engineer family members, because I think they thought I was building a culvert under the M8 at the time. So it would have taken, we probably needed several JCBs to do that if I'd taken their advice. And recruiting volunteers capable of heavy work, because it was a bit more heavy than we normally do. We sourced the materials, so we begged, borrowed and stole materials for doing the work, and we did a design, made a design. We set off to it. We recruited the volunteers we needed. We set off to do the work, and here it is here. So here's some of our volunteers cutting the trench to take the pipe. The pipe, this is it here, cutting the trench here. And we laid a bed of gravel, and then the pipe was set, including the right pitch. Sorry? Somebody want to come in there?
Sorry, somebody, I'm just going to meet the participant. Okay. Here you go.
Setting the pipe and the pitch here, and building the culvert ends using the rubble that we managed to harvest from a bit of work I'd been doing in my garden. And then we covered the pipe with the excavate, including the type 2 material that we'd set aside at the end. And this is us finishing it with a tamp here. And I think that tamp there, Richard, was one that your grant bought as well. So there we go. So that's the finish. So far, so good. Looks as though it's working. Looks as though it's working. It's definitely improving that complex problem that we had. My thanks to everybody that helped us with the design, and to our volunteers. We had a wonderful day that day actually doing that. You actually felt as though you'd accomplished something. So that's me, Sharon, I think. Just to say that we can't do any of this work. We are complete amateurs, total amateurs, without our partners. And I have to mention Pass for All, Richard and his team, not only for the training, which I found extremely helpful, but for the grant that they provided to help us buy some equipment, some absolutely essential equipment. Our colleagues in particular at Community Woods and Garden, who are being great supporters of us. And of course, the Community Woodlands Association, who have been also a great source of advice for us. Thank you to you all. So thank you, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Norman. Extremely informative, and it's just along the road from me. I'm in Calder, so I must pop along and see you guys sometime. I hope you've all had a little shake and a move about, and we don't want anyone getting stiff and sore. Q&As, I've got 2 posts open. If you want to ask any questions to either Richard or Norman, please do so there. And Stuart, if you want to take control, we'll move on to you. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Stuart Whittaker. I'm the Community Woodland Officer for Cassiltoun Housing Association and the Cassiltoun. I work alongside the Cassiltoun Trust. I'm going to go through 20 minutes and just say thank you for inviting me along, but I'm going to go through about a journey from 2018. If you're at the conference in 2023, I will be covering some of the things I spoke about, but I'm going to go in a little bit more depth. And there's a slight change in some of the things I'll be talking about. And some of the things, to be honest, have been talked about already, especially with Richard. So I'm going to crack on. I'm going to go through some stuff and see how we get on. So as I say, it's a Castlemill Park journey of new signage from 2008. It started with signage and it moved completely on about paths. It's all about paths and it's all about a woodland. I just want to thank a few people here as well. Scottish Forestry, who I'm supported by and funded at the moment. Pass for All, as there's going to be talking a little bit about Pass for All, quite a lot of things about Pass for All, and Cassiltoun Housing Association. Just to let you know, I'm the only woodland officer who works for a housing association in the UK. There is woodland officers, but they don't work for a housing association, so it's a little bit different. And I will explain why a woodland officer does this as well for a housing association. There's some context. We're in the southeast side of Glasgow, and the woodland is in compartments. It's split, and it's 32 hectares. Now, the 32 hectares, which is really interesting, is going over to be a local nature reserve. And one of the reasons going over to a local nature reserve is because the buy-in of this place. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The woodland is surrounded by Castlemill Estate. And since 2011, there's been one of me, basically. And we cover the maintenance in about 32 hectares of the area as well, the management of the woodland. We don't own the woodland. It's owned by Glasgow City Council. But we have a permission to use through Glasgow City Council to do the maintenance work, the majority of it. Some of the things we don't do, like high arbour work, but we do quite a lot. So just to start with, we got some money from the Community Pass for the Get Active leaflet in 2018. And I just came into post, and it was designed, compiled with a mix of community involvement and myself. The intention was to get people outside, encourage them into being active in Cassiltoun Park. It was very straightforward, but it didn't connect to any of the on-site information and interpretation. The one thing that it didn't do was the path grading system. And we will go back to the path grading system, and we'll talk about it for the leaflet and the information interpretation board. So it didn't really cover it. It's very, very basic, but it was good, but it was basic. But then in 2018, we have quite a lot of buy-in with organisations, and we have one called the Youth Advisory Panel for Cassiltoun Housing Association. And they went to Stirling, to Green Space in New Scotland, and they came back and they said they wanted to look at the signage, and the group wanted the old signage replaced, and there was old signage and they wanted it replaced. So they got a lot of it replaced, and they wanted it replaced because a lot of it was faded and vandalised. We did have funding in 2002 from Wyatt Funding, Woods in and around town. There was not a lot of community buy-in on that though. And what was happening, the signage was destroyed very, very quickly, to be honest. There's no buy-in. So what happened? The Youth Advisory Group panel, I suggested connecting of areas and of importance, not just street names, but they received permission from Glasgow City Council to remove the old signage. And then we went with Paths for All, and we got 20 new signs installed promoting access through the park, and lots of support from the Castlemill Park project volunteers. Now we do have that. We have a Castlemill Park project volunteers, very similar to TCV, the conservation volunteers, do kind of the same thing, but they're supported from Cassiltoun Housing Association. We do have a friends group as well, and they are starting now to do a little bit more work in the park, which is great, and they're all getting involved. But at the moment, it's a Castlemill Park project. So so the volunteers were involved in checking distances. They were checking distances and also proofing for signs as well. So making sure the signs were great and stuff. Maybe not a lot of buy-in, but it's starting to get the community involved. The Friends of group were involved in it. The Youth Advisory Group were involved in it as well. So it's quite interesting. Due to the success, the first round of funding from Paths for All, we went for another round, and it went from 20 signs to 60. But there was a lot more community feedback on this one. We were asking for online and for feedback, consultation, and the Youth Advisory Panel were really involved as well. So it was like, what signs do you want? We just didn't want like Macquarie Road through here. We wanted place names that people were going to use to go through the park, because the park is around the estate. So we really wanted people to really benefit for going into an urban green space. Lots of rechecks and measures of distances and stuff like that they involved in. But then what happened? COVID hit, and we were on a bit of a standstill, but we still didn't stop. We did carry on going forward. So what happened? The next round of funding, all these, we basically, when we could in late 2019, they were doing, like, as I said, they were doing all the pre-checks, they were checking distances. So we were getting some of the volunteers to check the distance, then doing a recheck and making sure they're okay. But in that time as well, we were doing some training. We did the path grading system training as well. So we had that. But two of our volunteers and myself had some path grading. And that was really, really good with Paths for All, because it changed quite a few things within the leaflets and the interpretation boards. But then one thing in particular, we needed a buy-in for these signs. And you can see one of the Castlemill Park project volunteers, and this was me putting the sign at the poles up, because I've had previous background of being a ranger. I was able to upskill them. And it's not just, right, here's a post, let's put it in there, let's leave it. Now let's develop some of the volunteers along with it. So they were helping, and it's basically, they were helping along, putting them in, brilliant. So they put the signage up, and they were doing stuff like that. And that was being a big, big plus this is it's like, so we've had some people, we've had some really good success stories. People have gone on to other works, and basically when that upskilling and development. So the one thing is with paths, there's a big thing, not just to engage, but to upskill and community development. You might hear about asset-based community development, and that is, as a community team for the Housing Association, community development is very, very important. So we had new funding available. So we did Art in the Park leaflets. We put stickers up. We went for stickers, real high-grade stickers, because we knew if we put roundels up, we do get antisocial behaviour, and we didn't want them all destroyed or anything like that. So we did that. So Glasgow City Council come round to me and said, oh, we're incorporating the Magnificent Walk, 11 Walk, and we want some information in a leaflet, a new leaflet. And with the new leaflet, we went back to for pastoral, and we did that. So we were working with other stakeholders, and that was really important as well, because the M11 route, like the Shale Trail, is really important. It goes right through Cassiltoun Park, and it's bringing people in. When it brings people in as well, it brings people to go to the Jelly Piece, a cafe next to us. That brings people in for employment as well. So that's been really good as well. So we're training for volunteer path grading, as you can see. So lots of things happening. So these are the stickers, as you can see, in 2021. So we went round with the volunteers sticking them on, and they're still there today. And we do need some more, actually. So we're asking for some more, stuff like that. But then getting ready, this leaflet came up, and it was just basically, we've got free walks here. And all the photographs were done by the volunteers or the friends group or people who had an interest. We went to the access officer, and I've never seen a mat of red pen go everything. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And that's great. And the buy-in from it is good, because we need to be critiqued. And some, it's hard for a community who've always said in Cassiltoun, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. But it's good because we were learning from it. And I had, as a woodland officer, say, don't worry if it's going to be wrong. We're going to learn from it. And they were great, actually, the access officer for Glasgow City Council at the time. So this is the leaflet we have. As I say, connect, it was changed, connect to Cassiltoun Park. The M11, it was all about all stuff going on. And that's the outside of it. The inside has got the path grading system on the top. Now, there was a bit of debate, and Richard, with me and Richard on this one, the community who were doing the consultation on it turned around, and the bottom bit, we wanted more being, it's very text heavy, and I can admit that it's text heavy. But the community, we said, we want more pictures on it. We've got enough text up here for the path grading system. They turned around and said, no. And they turned around, and the reason they said no is because they wanted people to visit the park, because there's this feeling with the community. It was so neglected. So we had to tell a little bit more. So I turned around to Richard and said, look, the community have all coming back and said they want this. So we went with them. If you went to SRUC and said with a lecturer, and I've had a lecturer in here and go, too much text, too much text. Speak to the community though and see what they want as well. So that's one of the things, if you're doing a trail or you're doing any paths maintenance, community is very, very important to be involved. So we had new interpretation all about, and then Ramble of Scotland got involved with us, and they with the Armstrong 11 walk, because our volunteers were teaching the Ramble of Scotland volunteers of how to put poles in for the M11 walk. So this has had an ongoing thing with them. And support from the Cassiltoun Park volunteers has been invaluable on this. Digging holes and then upgrading. We had a lot of funding came in from Cycle Scotland to upgrade the paths. Path edgings being put in. They were all involved as well. So it's been really, really good. The new interpretation board and information board, and this is really interesting on this one. On this. They were really involved. They put all this goes outside, and you just seen a photograph, and you will see a photograph again on it. And it's outside the building. Now, the problem, what we did have is we did think that we didn't want it that was right close to the actual path, because we knew it was going to get damaged. So we put it back, but we put it 3 times the size, and it is quite big. So people with disabilities that are in a wheelchair can see it all. And it's big text as well. So that's some of the stuff that's come back. The other thing on that there, this is some of the things you've got to be very careful. This was a draft, and you can see Glasgow City Council sign just sitting there. It's in the wrong place. The keeper of the logo wants it in the far right corner. So stuff like that, they get, we've got to be mindful of that. So if you're doing any interpretation or information, you've got to be mindful of other partners who are coming on board with you. As I see, putting more signage, the M11, getting the Ramblers Scotland, they're all involved. 2022, we got more signage again. And we had another little bit of woodland, because what we found is we did one little area, but the other area, the community went, you're neglecting this. So we got a little bit more funding, and we did a lot of feedback on that as well, to speak to them as well and say, look, so we did 2 information boards, which were up in the school and the playgrounds, and we had a leaflet with this signage, basically. So it's really, really important kind of thing we were involved in. But we wanted to get consultation with everybody in this area. It was a different area. It was really good. So we designed this. We just walk through your woodlands. And it's a tick one. So they get a leaflet and they walk around and they tick what they can see different seasons. We did get some really good feedback on this as well when we were putting the signage up. There was a woman who's really involved with us now. Actually, we can't get through the path because it's stepped. And I turned around and said, right, okay, can't do that. What we're going to do, we're going to mark it. We're going to say we can't go into it because a boy's got cerebral palsy. And we've been working with Glasgow City Council on that area, and maybe in the long term, if funds are available, they're going to put like some railing there. But it's difficult because the funding, the way it was done, in very much in the past. But it's good to get feedback from people. So new signs and maintenance. In 2023, a lot happened. New cycle funding, Cycle Scotland funding, path upgrading of the network. We did a lot. We did about 2 kilometres of upgrading of path to shore it up. New structures, 3 new notice boards, a new bench came in from the Glasgow Community Fund. Started, as I say, it started from the advisory group, then it ended up with many other people coming on board. And 2024, sorry, one little suggestion from a youth advisory group ended up with 75 signs, 2 new leaflets. We've had 2 signs destroyed. We do get them tagged. And one of the things with the Cassiltoun Park project is we clean them. As soon as they're done, we get them off. We don't go on, if I say, this is terrible and stuff, do a hearts and minds approach. We do get them tagged, but we've had work with other organisations like the Youth Complex to quell it down, stuff like that. We've had tons of volunteer support. Now, from this, with the volunteer support, has been invaluable. But just to say, if I go back, one question here, 2024 onwards, what we have had, we went for the Ian Finlay Fund. There was 450 metres on a core path. What was blocking one area to another area because there was no lighting. We went for replacement lighting with the Ian Finlay Fund. Now, the one thing in particular, we did a lot of consultation in the area. There was a pond area, and you would not walk through. We've done all the signage completely. People still didn't want to walk through. So then we applied for the Ian Finlay Fund, and the replacement lights have just gone live about 4 weeks ago on a test. So people will start going through, because the problem with Cassiltoun, people, and this still happens today, Cassiltoun Park wouldn't walk through there. It's bad. And that has happened in the 1980s. There was a really bad, it was getting a lot of bad rep. But now with that, we put the light in it. It won't make, new lighting won't make a place safe. It could have the opposite. And I must admit, it could have the opposite because it lights up areas. But one thing it will do, it will put people to walk through an area. And it goes from the Cassiltoun stables where we are to Thomas Gardens. The main vein going through for 400 metres. And what was happening, people get taxis around. And we know from feedback already, this is great. I can go to the Jelly Piece in the winter now. And we're going to hopefully see an increase. Now, that was stopping a barrier. Now, that's where the Ian Finlay Fund was really, really good for this, is because that lighting is stopping a barrier for people coming through. They won't do it. That lighting has been replaced in one area. As a woodland officer, I don't want lighting anywhere else, really, if it's going to cause problems with the wildlife. But this area on a core path it needed to happen. It has happened. It's cost on the region about £90,000 to start with a little bit of funding with Glasgow City Council, about another £30,000. This is happening, and there's a flooding thing with it as well. But as I say, if you're going for the Ian Finlay Fund, if there's a barrier stopping, which has actually been very, very good in particular in regards to that as well. So that has really supported. The community are on board with it. They're actually great with there's new lighting going on board. It's in an area where there's a pond. It goes past. Now the core path is quite a wide core path where we're on as well. And it is a major travel route for schools coming through the estate. And hopefully going forward, that will be a really good thing. We're not putting that in with the volunteers. That has been contracted out. But Cassiltoun have received the £90,000 funding, and we're the major stakeholder, and we've been the mate for procurement and everything like that. But it's been very, very good. Now, I'm just about to finish, but I'm just going to say the volunteer support from 2018 and the community has been invaluable. What we don't do is go out and say, right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do. We need to seek their support. And that's been valuable. And some of those volunteers, one of them in particular, has been gone over all over the place. Where for Nature Scott, we've got people who are rangers now with us, and some people just for their health and well-being. And I've seen some really good people have been health walk leaders. We have a health walks come through here after they've gone on board with that. So the old buy-in to paths in an urban green space is really important. And that is me finished, actually, if that's okay. Hopefully I'm all right for time. I think I've done all right for time, 20 minutes. And that's me. Okay.
Well done, Stuart. Thank you very much. Malcolm said, core paths networks help manage, facilitate and promote outdoor access. Access rights enshrined in the Land Reform Scotland Act 2003 apply. So, yeah, thank you very much, Malcolm, for that input. Stuart, wonderful and lovely to see you there with the future children of your neighbourhood in that picture there. That's lovely.
Just to say, just before I finish, if you see the girl in the middle, she's actually pulling her tongue at the camera there. So,
so she is. Love it. Love it.
Sorry, I had to say.
Superb. Thank you, Stuart. Andy, over to you now. If you want to take control of the slides, we'll finish up with all the information about Anagach. You're on mute, Andy.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Sharon. I hope I don't repeat too much of what has gone on before, but you'll certainly spot some common themes. Although Anagach Woods is a very different proposition from the areas that we have already heard about. The woods, for those who don't know it, lie between Anagach village and the River Spey. We don't go quite as far as the Spey, stretching roughly northeast to southwest, and we've got something like 380 hectares of woodlands, which have been in community ownership for over 20 years now. And they were originally planted in about 1766. At that time, they formed part of Seafield and Strathspey estates, and planted using seed from Abernethy pine woods, so basically native woodland seed, and still largely pine woods today, although we do have areas of birch, rowan and other things, and then around some of the access roads down towards the southwestern part of the woods, we have some specimen trees. Beech trees line the approach roads, and they look spectacular at this time of year, and then some more ornamental species, which do cause us a bit of a problem in some regards, which we'll maybe come on to later on. This rather scary looking diagram is actually a Strava heat map, and Strava users, if they're logging where they're going, can then access this map, which shows the intensity of the routes used round about in Granton. The white routes are the heaviest used, and then the red ones are also some of our pick out some of our
main paths, but you'll see that there's a myriad of little lines all over the place, and there's very little of the wood which is not used by somebody for running, walking, biking, or horse riding, whatever it may be. And we've got something like in excess of 25 kilometres of paths are mapped on the OS map. But that doesn't include the multitude of minor desire lines, which, as you see, crop up all over the place. Not all of the tracks that we might use are actually owned by the Trust. This particular track belongs to Strathspey Estate, the previous owners of the woods, and it borders our southeastern side. We would use this, and we have a right of access over it in our title. We would use this if we were doing any major timber extraction works. And that would be quite a consideration for us, because A, it's a long track, and B, the surface is maybe not terribly suited to timber lorries. But under the terms of our title, we would have to reinstate the track after completion of any timber extraction. So that's one of the different kind of tracks that we have. We have an old military road, which was built by General Caulfield, not General Wade. In fact, General Caulfield did a lot of the work around the Highlands, although Wade generally gets the credit, if credit it is. And this was after the Battle of Culloden. So this is a very popular route, leads down from the village down to the Spey by the most direct route, and is a very scenic area. Another view of it, one of our principal path junctions, and then we have some old historic now features, I suppose. This is a World War II Home Guard checkpoint. There was a training camp nearby, and so access and egress from the village was controlled, and this was manned by the Home Guard. Through almost the length of the woods, from the military road that you've just seen all the way down to Cromdale in the northeast, we have the Speyside Way. This is a core path which has recently been upgraded by the National Park Authority, and that was specifically to improve the alignment of the route, improve the surface, make it a bit wider, cut out some wet areas, and lessen some of the gradients. Now, I've been on the board now for about 2.5 years, and this was a project which slightly fell into our laps. We didn't really have to do very much about it, except that we agreed the spec with CNPA and gave them agreement for them to carry out the work. They arranged the contractor and oversaw all the works. So this is immediately after the work was finished, and you'll see that there's quite a clear line. We've got a good path surface, even finish, and that in fact brought a little bit of criticism immediately afterwards. People felt it looked a bit like a motorway. But it is, of course, suitable for pushchairs and wheelchairs, and so it was generally pretty well received by the community. This is a view across the dump. You can see this is one of the relatively few open areas within the woods. This is the new path coming through here. Yes, it was a bit stark at that time, but a year on, you can see that the edges of the paths are blending in and naturalizing, and it doesn't really look out of place at all to my eye, and certainly any sort of urban feel that it might have had has been toned down by the elapse of time. Not all our paths are to that standard, but this is one of our promoted routes, and we do use the grading system, Scottish Path grading system. So This is not the same standard, but it is perfectly appropriate to the surroundings, and it is well used. And we do our best to maintain these to a suitable standard. We also have a multitude of desire lines. As I've said, these crop up all over the place. And we do far less in the way of maintenance of these. They kind of come and go, and some of them get a bit overgrown in the summertime. Depends on the amount of people using them, and football, as you know, kind of keeps paths open. But with research showing that wildlife experiences disturbance within 100 meters of tracks, from the Strava heat map, you'll have seen that there's actually very little of the woods which are undisturbed, and that is even although parts of the woodlands are designated as a special protection area, and we border on the special area of conservation in the River Spey. The particular interest for the SPA in Anagach is capercaillie, which are present but in very small numbers, and the kappa are having a very hard time at the moment. There is always, as others have mentioned, a need for path maintenance. Where there is just encroaching vegetation, we run regular volunteer days, and generally cutting back light vegetation is something that's readily tackled by volunteers. The paths through most of the woods, actually, we're very fortunate. Although this is part of the red route, much of the area is free draining glacial sand and gravel, but heavily used hollows do gather puddles, and so we tackle these areas as best we can. We put in offlets for water, and we've brought in some hardcore and other materials for a bit of resurfacing. But because of the nature of the soil that we've got, we are able to create borrow pits on site. And that obviously has a financial advantage for us. We can just source materials as and when we need them. And they're also on hand pretty near to site, so it kind of minimises the amount of haulage of materials around the place. And once this borrow pit has been tidied up, in fact, it's going to be a site for a new bench, because following some consultation work, we received suggestions that there should be more benches around the woods, just to give people an opportunity to take in the woods, have a bit of a breather, or those who are less able just can gather their strength for the next little bit. We have been approached by Park Run to create a route through the woods. That did cause us a few problems, in as much as there were issues over disturbance in sensitive areas. And we suggested that maybe they could try it for a trial period, but that wasn't acceptable to Park Run. They wanted a year-round agreement. So we proposed an alternative route. But when that was inspected, it didn't meet Park Run standards. They require an even surface, and there were some bits were quite steep, so they didn't feel that was terribly acceptable. So we needed to do a bit of work on that. So with our volunteers, we have done work. We've imported some aggregate, and then, as you'll see here, this is volunteers top dressing with material which has been won on site. But we're not just quite sure whether Park Run's going to go ahead. They've got continuing issues regarding parking, marshalling, cafes and funding and so on. So we await with interest to see whether, after all the hard work we've put into creating a suitable path, it is actually going to be used by Park Run, but time will tell on that one. When we do need to move heavier aggregate around the place, it is very handy to know somebody with a suitable plant, and this was a volunteer who had a mini digger handy, and came along to one of our sessions and carried this around the woods for us, which the volunteers on the day were greatly pleased with. And another section of path with a squad of volunteers, the before and after. Yeah, with so many paths, we kind of pick and choose what we maintain, but as others have commented, maintaining a suitable surface, keeping it dry, and dealing with any tree hazards are certainly key issues for us. But we've also had, for over 10 years now, we've had a bike skills area, mountain bike skills area. This was partly to encourage the mountain bikers to use this area and not to spread so much into the more sensitive areas in the woods. But after 10 years, it needed a bit of a refurb. And we were fortunate enough to fall heir to a grant, really. There was a big project in the Highlands had come unstuck for some reason, and so we were approached at short notice to say, could we spend some money by within the next 3 months? And since this had been on the stocks for us, we said, yes, how much have you got? And in fact, that tender was not so much on the basis of here's what we want to do, tell us what it's going to cost. It was rather the other way around, and we said, here's some money, how much can you do for it? And we got bids in for that, and so the mountain bike area has been upgraded, and that was done in consultation with the local kids, who are kind of primary users of it, I suppose, and the Badenoch and Strathspey Trails Association. There was a meet the contractor day when the kids could discuss with the contractor how the work was carried out, and considerations in how to build trails, and some lessons for them in good practice in trail building, because we have had some vigilante trail building, I suppose, through some bits of the wood. And this was actually very successful. So yeah, since the refurb, the area has been well used, and it's great to see what has come of the improvement in the facilities. Now, as you know, there's no point in having a network of trails if people don't know about them. So we do have way markers and signboards and things around the woods. This was one of our original signboards. Unfortunately, after a bit of a storm, that's what it looked like. So we had a bit of repair work to do. And again, this was underway when I joined the board, and there was quite a lot of consultation about exactly how this was going to be done, the design of the notice boards, and the path grading, and inclusion of Gaelic on the signs, and all these kind of things. So proofreading again and again and again and again was certainly key to trying to get this right. One thing I would say about the path grading system is that with green, red, and blue trails, it's all very well, but red-green colour blindness is the most common form, and we did try to get the routes indicated differently on the signboards, so that those who are colourblind could understand the symbols. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. It was just too late in the day. So I think if trails are being marked with that in mind, using, I don't know, crosses or dashes or circles or triangles or something would be something to help people around that, because it is going to be a bit frustrating for people to see a nice new sign but not be able to interpret it because of any handicap that they've got. We use our own materials where possible, although we do get donations sometimes from a local sawmill, and those are all very welcome. And then with our own trustees and with some volunteers, and working in conjunction with the local men's shed, We have different styles of signboards depending on the location. We still have a suite of old signs which we are aware need a bit of upgrading. Touchwood, we're very fortunate to have few vandalism issues, but all the infrastructure in the wood does need to be maintained and upgraded, and we're aware that we've got a bit of a backlog. Some waymarkers are looking very sad for themselves. But we've lately had a long-term forest plan approved, and Piers Boise of CWA won the tender for that, and his help was invaluable in putting together the application and the preparation of the long-term plan. And that has given us a clear way forward. We've identified the backlog in maintenance that we have, and we have an idea as to what improvements we wish to carry out as well. So whether using volunteers, and we are very fortunate to have people travel quite a long way. We have people come down from Dingwall. We've had people coming up from Edinburgh to work on our volunteer days. We have lately reached an agreement with the local curling club, who have a clubhouse in the woods, or just on the edge of the woods, and we use that as a base for our volunteers, which makes a huge difference to running a volunteer day, and gives them a bit of comfort, gives somewhere to get in out of the rain and get a cup of tea if you want it, and there's toilets there and one thing or other. So that is a great help, and we certainly wouldn't have managed to achieve what we have without the volunteers that we are able to call on regularly. And these events are promoted through our social media channels, Facebook, and we're revamping our website as well. So we're very pleased with the way that these are coming on, but we recognise that we've got a lot of work ahead of us. And I think at that point, Sharon, I'll call it quits.
Brilliant, Andy. Thank you so much for that. What a massive network of paths and trails you have there. So you've got a big job on your hands, but it certainly seems like you've got it in hand for sure. Thank you. Now, I'm very mindful of the time, and I'm just got one more slide for you here, folks. Just I will email. It's likely to be beginning of next week before I get this to you, just due to my working days. I'll email you a PDF, and I'll ask for some feedback as well. Now, you will get an automated email, I believe, from Teams webinar saying that the recording of the session will be available immediately after this event. I'm going to stop that recording, because what I want to do is I want to edit bits on the recording, and then I'll put it onto our YouTube channel. So I'll let you know when that's available to see. So you'll still get the email. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to stop it, but the link to the video won't be working. So please don't worry about that. Thank you very much to all of you who've attended. You've been super listeners. You've all, and I can see you're still here with us, which is wonderful. But a big, big thank you to all my speakers today. You've been a joy to listen to, and you have been the best speakers because you kept the time. So thank you so much, folks, for doing that. It's been a true pleasure having you here. And I look forward to seeing some of you on our future sessions. Take care, folks.